Hey guys, this is Lucas from Better Coding Academy, and in this video I will show you how to get started with React Router. Now I personally love React Router. I think it's definitely a must-learn library for getting started with React and calling yourself a React developer. So that's what we're going to have a look at today, and we're going to look at getting started with that. So this is the React Router website, and React Router does have native support, but for this video I'm going to be focusing on specifically React Router DOM and using it within a React web application. So what we're going to do is it just tells us to install React Router DOM. So inside of my terminal over here, I'm just going to cancel my watch and I'm going to yarn add React Router -DOM like so. Now I'm just going to add all of my dependencies dependencies here, but you can put it in dev or however you want to do it. That's totally up to you. But I'm just putting mine straight in because I'm just trying to keep it as simple as possible. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to yarn watch this again, and let's create a component over here that we're going to use as our root. So inside of components here, I'll create a components directory, and what I'm going to do is just put together a very basic kind of directory structure. So the way I like to do it is have components root like this, and then I'll probably just do a very simple boilerplate file like this, and then another file here, index.js, and do a boilerplate like so. So now I've got a root and then an index. So just quick explanation on this one. This file here just imports and exports it. And the reason that we have an index is then when we try to render the root component and we do import root from /components/root, we don't have to write /root like that, because if we just write it once, then it will pick up on index.js and it will then import root and it will allow us to just write root once here. So we do root like so, and then it goes at 1, 2, 3, 4. So now let's have a look at that, and it should say root on our page. So that's working just fine, and obviously we don't have anything in here about React Router just yet. But this is how we can get started. This video here, by the way, is just going to show you a very simple introduction to getting started with React Router. There's a lot of functionality here, and it can get really, really complex, but let's just look at the most simple example, and that's what I'm going to showcase here. So inside of index.js here, this is like the very root of my application, like not even the root component, but like the stuff that we wrap around it. I'm going to go in here and just put my browser router from React Router DOM like so. And then from there, I'm going to go around my root component, and I press Shift Option W on my keyboard, and it allows me to type browser router like so around it. And I don't know if your text editor will support that, but it's just a nice keyboard shortcut that I like to use. So we have the browser router here, and essentially how this works is we need to have something that wraps around all of our components, and this is kind of like just a controller. It stores the current state, the current page, and all of that kind of information, and allows your components to access that information. But essentially you just need to have something like that, and if we have a look at our page, you see it's still just working just fine. Nothing too much has changed here. But now let's go into our root component here, and let's create a couple pages. So I'm going to go here and just create a couple pages real quick. So I've got home.js like this, and let's just call this one home, and another new file here, index, and then just export like so. And then let's go here and let's create another page called about.js. So whilst I'm putting this together, just a quick explanation about the directory structure. If you don't agree with how I do this, that's totally fine. I'm not here to debate my directory structure. I'm just here to show you how to use React Router. As you go through this video, you will see that you don't have to follow this specific directory structure. In fact, there's hardly any sort of directory structure that you have to follow specifically in order to get React Router working, but I'm just showing you what I normally like to do, so I'm just going to go ahead with that. So whatever's floats your boat here. So underneath my React import, I'm going to just write inside of root here, I'm going to put two things. Firstly, I'm going to put route and then switch from React Router DOM. And now I'm going to import my about and also my home components. So now I've got these two over here, and I've got a route and a switch. So the way that a route works is it matches a particular path within your application. Now, it's not necessarily the browser path. With React Router, you can also have other things other than the one we have here, which is the browser router. You can also have memory router, hash router, but I won't get into that in too much detail. But essentially, your React Router contains an internal idea of a path. Now this path for the default page would be just the /. So it's the home URL, it's the home page. So obviously we're going to be linking this up with the home component here. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So inside of my root component, I'm just going to write here, I'm going to put a div, and I'm just going to put a strong tag up here and write, this is the root component, so we know where that part is coming from. And I'm going to write here, route component is equal to home. and then path is equal to / like so. So then what this will do is this will render the home component because of the / path. So now let's have a look here, and you see we've got this is the root component, and then I've got my home here, which is an h1, which is why it's bigger. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here into the path, and I'm going to put a / and I'm going to type hello, hello, hello. Now, this might seem really random, but essentially what I'm showing you is that this path here is not just the /, but it still matches. Now, I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but the reason that it still works and it still renders the home component is because this / path matching is not exact. It basically says as long as it starts with this path. You'll notice that if I do /hello like that, it won't render, but then if I do hello, 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 it will render. So that is kind of how it works, but let's just go back here and look at the hello example again. If I do / hello here, this won't render, but if I do in my URL now /hello, /hello twice, you see it will render. So basically you can kind of think of the / as like separating parts of the path, and that's kind of how it matches, but I won't go into too much detail here. If we only wanted to match just purely the / path, which is probably what we're going for here, the best way to do it is just to write exact as a prop. So then by passing in exact, it will only match for exactly the /. So now if we try to do hello, hello, hello again, you see it won't render anything. So now that's our home component. Now let's also render the about component onto the page. So the way we do that is for about, let's let it go to the about like so, and I'm going to make the path about like that. Now we can make it exact or we can choose not to. In some cases it might be a good idea not to. You might be thinking, why not just put exact on everything? Well, let's just say we have a subpath underneath about. So let's just say inside of my about component there, I've got another path which is like, for example, our team. So you could do like about our team. Then if we want the about component to still render and then have its own route inside of the about component which render our team and so on and so forth, then it would be a bad idea to use exact here because then about our team will not be passed into here. So what I would actually suggest here is not to use exact as much as possible, but to only use it where only necessary. So in this case, I would say it's strictly necessary, probably for the home component in most cases. Even then you don't have to do it, and I'm going to show you how to get rid of this with switch in just a second. Not that it's bad or anything, but just to show you and explain it. But so we've got our home component here, and we've also got / about, and then that shows there. However, you usually won't see this type of code specifically within a production grade React environment, because usually this is surrounded with our switch. So what the switch will do is the switch will ensure that only one of these routes is rendered at any given one time. So if the home component were to render, then the about component would not render. So it basically goes inside, and if you look at the switch code inside of React Router, you'll see how it's done. But it will, as of right now, as of this version of React Router, it will render the first route that is matched by the switch. So for example, if it goes and it checks the home path and it sees that it matches, then it will render this one. If it sees that this one matches, then it will render that one, only if home is a non-match. So it kind of goes from top down in that order. So what I'm going to showcase here is, you'll notice that it's still currently working just fine. So I've got home, I've got about, that's fine. But then now what you'll notice is if I get rid of the word exact here and I do it like that, you'll notice that home still renders fine. But if we go to / about, it still renders home. And it's like I said, it only renders the first component. It doesn't render the next one if the first one is a match. So you can kind of think of the switch as like an or. Like for example, you can kind of think of like if path is like path is home, or path is about. It's kind of like an or in the sense that it matches the first one and then it just stops there. So I guess that was a bit of a contrived example, but I think that kind of follows. So we've got home and about here inside of our switch, and it will always render home. Now, if we were to remove the switch statement just to show you what that would look like without exact, you'll see that on the about page we have both home and about, but that's why I like to have the switch statement in here. But now you'll notice that it isn't working that well. So what you can actually do is you have two choices. You can add in the exact here, or alternatively, you can always put home or like your / root path as the bottom one, because now it's the bottom one about renders properly and home also renders properly. So it's kind of like you go from the most specific to the least specific in order here. So now we have our switch, and we've looked at switch, we've looked at routes. There, as I said, there's a lot more configuration that can be done, but for this video's purposes, we will not be looking into that. Now I will show you the other thing inside of React Router, which is really important, and that is the link component. So I'm going to put in a link here, and the way it's going to work is it's really, really simple. Just write link to equals, and let's create one for home, and let's do another one and for about. And obviously we write /about there. So now we've got home and about here. That looks kind of ugly. Let's just separate it out into a div. Onto the next line here. So we've got home and about, and maybe like just put an artificial space in there because I can't be bothered to fix it up properly. So I've got home and about, and now you'll notice that I'm using link from React Router DOM, and when I click on home, it doesn't do anything, but when I click on about, it takes us to the about page. And now if you actually hover on this, I know it's incredibly small, but you'll see that it actually shows the URL down here at the bottom, and it shows the correct URL. So it's actually like just a legitimate link, but then it kind of has like, you know, fancy JavaScript on top of it so that your page doesn't actually reload. So that's the brilliancy of React Router, is that it allows you to really build single page applications. So the whole like idea of single page applications is probably like really old now, kind of was a thing in like 2012. Now it's just like, you know, it's all web apps and whatever, and it's like SPA, single page applications have been taken for granted. But with using React Router, it just makes it so much easier to do this kind of thing inside of React. So that's what I like about it, is it's just so easy to set up, so easy to put together. So that's all I've got for you in this video. This was just a really quick start type video into React Router. If you like this kind of content, make sure you like and you subscribe, and let me know what you want to see in the future. But that's all I've got for you now. This has been Lucas with Better Coding Academy, and see you guys later.